What's up, parents? What's going on? My name's Corey, and with me, as always, is Heather Wells, board-certified cognitive specialist, national autism speaker, and, of course, brain balance extraordinaire, and one of my favorite people. What's going on, Heather?
Doing well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm hanging in there. It's a weird time right now, but we're navigating through it. And, whether you're homeschooling or whether you have a kid going to school and you're kind of a little scared of the current situation, just know that we got your back. We're here to bring you some tips, some tricks, some knowledge, and quite honestly, to have some coffee with you. Just be here and listen to you because darn it, we all need someone to talk to right now. And today, we're going to be talking about reading. Now, for me, I'm a brain balanced parent. I have a kid that went through the program for 9 months, and I'm proud to call myself a brain balanced parent because, when I was drowning, when I was going through the thick of it, I had a lifeline thrown to me, and the lifeline was like, hey, let me help you out, right? And that's what Heather and her staff do in the Texas area. And there are brain balance centers all over the country. But if you happen to be in South Lake, Mansfield, Katy, or coming soon to the Woodlands area, we've got a wonderful staff of people. Some of the top, centers in the nation are in this area. And we're here for you. We'll tell you more about the locations later, but whether you come to us or not, we want to make sure that you are getting the help that you need. And today we're talking about reading. Is that right, Heather?
Yes, that's right. I was a struggling reader as a kid, so I can bring in my professional and personal background here. And if anybody has questions, please type them in or share this with friends, if you have kids who are struggling, because reading is foundational to all areas of development. It's not just literacy, it is social emotional development. It is critical thinking. It is tied to math. I mean, just on and on it goes.
Yeah, it's true. And as always, we have a couple visuals for you. We're going to walk you through. You guys might see me looking up here. That's because I have another monitor. And sometimes, I'm going to be honest with you, Heather has me read some things. So I've got to have it up on a separate screen. So if we can bring that up, please, Maestro. There we go. Maestro is me, by the way. I clicked the button, so I don't know.
I'm going to give myself a cool name like that.
Yeah, Maestro. All right, so kids don't just catch up. What are we talking about here, Heather?
This is one of the biggest misconceptions. I am super passionate about getting this point across. If you have kids who are barely skating by right now, it doesn't just go away. That is extremely rare. In this example, 2 kids reading The 3 Little Bears, and the little girl says, Papa Bear was so frustrated when he came home to find someone had broken into his home. Look at that complex language there. And also the word frustrated, the emotional intelligence there. And the little boy says, the bear was mad. She was there. Is that accurate? Yes. Yeah. So he might get an okay score, but does he have the same level of language? Reading is a language-based skill. And we are going to talk about how hidden sometimes language challenges are. In the early years, you just have to know the basics. And then sometimes it's like flip a switch. My child was sailing through school. What just happened? He's so smart. This has nothing to do with intelligence. But there's a lot of research that shows that the gap gets wider and wider the later you address it. 5.2-year gap in these kids when they're around age 13. Wow. Right now, it's a slight gap. It will grow.
Right. All right, moving on to our next slide. Here we go.
Reading is not just something we automatically learn. It has to be taught. And the expectation is not that learning begins in school. Kids are already supposed to be exposed to books, print knowledge, start understanding that this symbol represents this letter. And so some of those basic foundational things are supposed to be in place before school even begins. So look how complex it is. We have comprehension. We have to pull in background knowledge. We're going to look at some things that get in the way of that. When I read, I should be able to relate it to what I saw on the news, to something that's happened in my own life, to another book I've read. I start connecting dots, and my knowledge doesn't add, it multiplies. Vocabulary is everything, y'all. Think about if you're talking to your kids and it was not a known context, would you know what they were talking about? Right. Or do you just automatically, and there's nothing wrong with doing this, but we do it subconsciously. The only issue is if your kids are struggling, I need that thing over there. Where is it? I did it. Are they specific? Right. Because language gets more and more specific as they get into social studies and science and on and on. but they have to understand the structure of words and of sentences. They have to be able to read between the lines. Not initially. Initially, it's just what's in black and white. But then I start understanding the motivations of the characters, cause, effect, predictions, the emotional undertones of a story. I have to then expand to expository text. But I have to be able to decode words. If I stumble through words, my memory has to be even stronger because it takes me longer to get through the sentence or the paragraph.
Right.
The greater the fluency, the greater the comprehension. That is absolutely completely found over and over in research. I've never seen a study that says anything other than that. So at first, kids are learning to read. So if you have kids who flew through pre-K, kindergarten, first grade, no problem, they are good at the decoding of the words, phonemic awareness, phonological knowledge. But then I have to start reading to learn. Do they have the fluency there to do that? Do they have all of those kind of overtones, undertones in between the lines? And then the later they get in school, we have to use a lot of critical thinking skills. The attention, the text is longer. Sometimes attention starts getting in the way, whereas it didn't when the stories were very short. Working memory, I have way more to process and connect dots to the later it gets.
Is that?
Yeah.
Did I lose you? I thought I lost you for a second. I'm like, okay, we're moving on to the next slide. Next slide. Okay, and yeah, so this is going to dive into these gaps in development. And is it correct that as they get older, again, like as we get to that 13-year-old gap, like there is a point in when it's almost like too late. You have to act on this stuff early, yeah? The
earlier, the better. Our brains are pliable. When we expose them to the right stimulation, we know what the issues are, we can grow new neural pathways. This is the way our brain develops. I mean, we learn first in our sensory motor system. And I have an example of that here in a minute. You know, as I'm walking to a door, I predict when to open the door. That translates into predicting what's going to happen next. When I can predict, I don't have as much anxiety. I can be self-regulated and focus on what I'm reading. But where are the gaps? And we're going to talk about some of these gaps and what resonates with you as we're talking. And like, I think that might be one of the issues with my kids, and understand that reading is such an interrelated process that a lot of kids have multiple issues, and they become evident when they're at a stage in school where those skills are called upon.
Yeah. It's hard to see this. Do you want me to zoom in a little bit?
No, really the intention was just to show that there are gaps. There are gaps in development when kids are struggling with reading. What are they? Are they social emotional gaps? Are they sensory motor gaps? Are they critical thinking gaps, etc.?
Yeah. All right, here we go. Boom. Ooh. And so getting out and moving your body helps, huh?
Yes. I know it sounds crazy that motor skills impact reading, but they do. Look what Dr. Rohde from Harvard said. Movement is crucial for every other brain function, including memory, emotion, language, and learning. Our higher brain functions depend on it. You can see vocabulary is learned 20% faster. Vocabulary is a huge issue as kids move into third grade and beyond if they're struggling with reading and they weren't previously. But picking up on cues, being able to predict, emotionally regulate, focus, it helps your digestion. If my tummy hurts, it's going to impact the body-brain connection is undeniable. By now, I think that people are starting to understand that. It helps short-term memory. We talked about working memory being an issue. In fact, working memory is one of the primary indicators of later reading troubles in pre-K and kindergarten. So attention span, complex thinking, problem solving, being able to do all this compare and contrast stuff, but it just improves learning overall. And fine motor, I don't have fine motor on this slide, but there are studies coming out that saying fine motor abilities are very direct predictors of reading ability, because I have to have hand-eye coordination to write. I have to be able to have great self-regulation to write in the lines, in the margins, good sensory skills, it's motor memory, etc. So gross and fine motor is extremely relevant to reading. And anytime you're doing movement, you are growing the parts of the brain where reading develops.
Right. Love it. Next slide-orama.
So next, we're going to look at the sensory system. And these are just a few examples of how the sensory system directly relates to reading. So one of the most obvious ones that people think of is auditory processing. Auditory processing is language-based. Reading is also language-based.
Right.
So a classic example is dyslexia. If part of our auditory processing is the sounds arriving in our brains in the correct order. If you have kids who spell the word desk, D-E-S-K, but they spell it dex, D-E-K-S, that might mean that the signals are arriving in the wrong order. That same timing later leads to organization skills, where I get how this story is laid out, how this textbook is laid out. That's also organization, being able to keep a planner that we need in middle school and high school. But that timing component is, I understand elephant, redevelop instead of red envelope. You know, being able to see the parts of the words, that is hugely tied to reading success. But even being able to filter sound, a lot of kids don't know where sound is coming from. And so as they're reading, they hear all the extraneous noise and then they can't concentrate. Being able to hear the stress in a word or a sentence. I think she should get the job. I think she should get the job. The way I say that and which words I stress completely change the meaning. On and on it goes. But and if kids have poor auditory processing, it often gets misdiagnosed as ADHD. Just FYI, that's not what the topic is today, but I have to say that. But understanding, prefixes and suffixes and root words, being able to hear the slight little pauses there, knowing where the commas and the periods go, that completely kind of gives me a filing system for the individual thoughts and how they go together. I'm going to show visual on the next slide, so I'm going to skip that right now. The sense of smell is tied to memory, creation, and emotional connection. I'm just skipping visual.
Sorry. I meant to skip the visual.
Sorry.
Go for it. I'm gonna make it big too.
But if you think about the sense of touch, if I don't feel the difference in rough, smooth, hard, soft, how am I going to learn descriptive words? Everything becomes very boring because I only understand the nouns or the verbs, and I don't get the color. I can't visualize the story. And we know that when we read a story, we start visualizing it, and that aids comprehension. Same goes with taste. But the sense of being upright and balanced, our equilibrium, and anybody who watches the show knows that I had huge issues with this as a little girl. I had tumors on my optic nerve, so my sense of upright and balance was off. That directly impacts visual perception. Visual perception issues are often confused with dyslexia. But if I feel dizzy, how am I going to concentrate? Right? If I don't have good body awareness or good equilibrium, I don't know where I am in space, so I don't understand spatial concepts. Look in the upper right-hand corner of this page. I don't even know what that means, perhaps, or even spatial concepts in the story itself. Being able, if I don't feel my own body, I may miss out on pictorial cues that are giving me nonverbals from the characters that help me know how they're feeling. And I don't understand their motivations. I don't understand what went wrong in this relationship or why this character did this. Being able to generalize information, that is very tied to individuals who have poor body awareness. I may get all the details and I miss the big picture. I have no idea what the takeaway of this story was, or vice versa. Some kids get the big picture, but they can't remember the details.
Right.
And then on the next slide, just to give one example of sensory for you, but I could have done this on all of them, but for time's sake, I picked visual.
Right.
This was me as a little girl. Remember when I said you learn first in your sensory motor system? Yeah. If you look on the far right, you see all those houses, those beach houses? Yeah. This is a visual perception task. Find the 10 differences in this picture. If I cannot visually perceive the 10 differences in this picture, how am I going to pick what would you do in this scenario? Do you think this character made the right choice? Why or why not? I don't even understand same and different, cause effect, if I don't visually perceive it that way. A lot of kids, their eyes will jump all over the page, just like in the top left, or the words overlap. Sometimes they perceive visually the words in the wrong order, in the wrong direction. This is why visual problems get confused with dyslexia. I can't tell you how many times families have come to me, said, my child was diagnosed with dyslexia. They've been in the dyslexia program for 3 years, and there's no progress, or it's minimal at best. And they were diagnosed with that maybe because they reversed letters. In some schools, any reading challenge is called dyslexia, and that really just means a reading challenge. But it matters why your kids have it, because the way you address it is just completely different. and look at this book, this sample. I'm supposed to be seeing 2 pages of text. If I can't take in the entire visual field, I might only see certain words on the page, and then I really lose the meaning.
Right.
I can't perceive the differences in the letters. So then I have trouble with spelling and writing and reading and decoding.
Mm-hmm.
Just a few examples.
Yeah, it's rough. It's rough. We did a class that I was learning how to help seniors that were doing art projects. Here, actually, let me minimize this so you can see us. Seniors that were doing art projects, and they had cataracts. And so how do you teach someone that has a cataracts to do an art project? Well, they can't see right in front of them. And so what we did was we put some I forget, it was like a pair of clear glasses with Scotch tape over them. Mm-hmm. And it was almost exactly, what it looks like when you have a cataract. And so you had to bring it down to your center of vision, like under the glasses, because that's the best way that they could see, and, take it a little bit slower. And it helps you understand what some other people might be experiencing. And I mean, the same thing with this. I mean, we take for granted so many things, like reading. We just look at something and we're able to read it, right? But like my little guy doesn't even have the attention to focus on something like that. I mean, he's not struggling with dyslexia, thank goodness, but I don't know how fast his eyes are going. He just wants to be done. I just want to be done with this, right? So whatever I got to do, the first thing he does is if I were to leave him alone and not kind of supervise him and watch over him, he would just skip to the end and just be like, yep, I read it, it's done. And then he would guess the answer rather than actually comprehending it. And I'm sure we're going to talk about comprehension here in a second, but it's a tough thing. So this is really nice to understand what their point of view might be.
Yes, I was this child, I'm telling you, and I used to try to read. My eyes would skip over letters, words, entire lines. And I'm like, that didn't make any sense. Let me go back. What I miss. I couldn't even pay attention to the content. And since you mentioned your little guy, it's very important to note that our eye movements are very tied to attention. Mm. And so there is a huge overlap between ADHD also and trouble with visual perception and processing. And when kids just want to get done, there is a struggle somewhere. Kids are not born lazy. So please don't think, and Corey knows this, but anybody out there, I know it can look like a choice. If they're interested in something, they'll take their time and do it right. And if they don't care, they won't. But why do they have that avoidance to it? There is always a reason. Yeah. So for the visual perception and processing, play sorting games, matching games, find this, one of these things is not like the other. Puzzles. Memory is fantastic because you're getting motor, the fine motor, and you're having to know if they match or not, and you're using memory, which is so tied to literacy. You're using many skills. Have them sort the laundry, sort anything by one attribute, size, shape, color, and then make them having them sort by 2 attributes, then 3. This is so important. Visual perception and processing challenges are one of the most taxing challenges our kids face, and it is rare that is not a component, at least one component of kids' reading struggles. Even the ones who do have dyslexia, it's a separate issue.
Well, and so next we're going to talk about kind of the stages of reading here and the age ranges. What do we see here?
The main thing I just wanted to point out is learning to read, just to kind of phrase it a different way. I'm learning this letter goes with this sound. I start understanding consonant, vowel, consonant. I might have sight words, high frequency words. I can tell the differences in sounds, things like that. A lot of kids who've had ear infections may have difficulty with that because as they were learning language, they were getting muffled, distorted sounds coming to them, and they may have trouble with reading. So keep that in mind. And then there's a transition into reading to learn. They're starting to get more independent. They can recognize, oh, this is a narrative, which is a story with characters and a plot and a setting and problem solution, feelings, versus an expository text. This is a textbook. This is informational and it's fact-based. And the vocabulary is much more difficult. And then fluent readers, they are reading to learn. It is supposed to be automated the way I'm reading. And my whole focus is on learning this science concept, learning about civics, government, etc.
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Next Slide. Ooh, what do we got here?
So because working memory is such a big deal, we want to think about the sensory system. If you think your child has auditory processing challenges, play a lot of rhythm games with them. You drum a beat, have them match it back, vice versa. Make it fun. Music, dancing, anything that's rhythm beat is excellent. Playing a musical instrument, you're getting fine motor as well as the auditory component. Texture books for those with tactile issues. Do anything where they're pushing, pulling, lifting. If they have body awareness issues, I just wanted to touch on a few of those real quick. But working memory is, as I'm reading this story, I can pull in background knowledge. Hey, this reminds me of the vacation we went on. And it makes that text mean more to me. It reminds me of something my parent taught me, something I saw on TV. How does it relate to the world? How does it relate to my life? How does it relate to other things I've learned? We use it with math. We use it with our mental sketch pad when we go to the grocery store. What did I need to pick up? Understand that your kids could have amazing memories in a lot of ways. They'll remember book, chapter, verse of what you said sometimes more than you wish they did. But when it comes to reading, do they remember the first part of the sentence or paragraph by the time they get to the end of it? Do they remember I before E, except after C? Do they all think about all the things they have to remember? They are using their working memory to recall what that vocabulary word meant, what sound this makes, what word family, what this suffix means, and what is the author's purpose. It is all about connecting dots. And it relies on your sensory motor skills. It relies on being able to pull in background knowledge, knowing having an organized brain so I can pull in the information when I need it and file it back. Yeah. So if your kids have difficulty with this, chunking is breaking a big thing down into its parts. You can get story maps. They also exist for expository text. Make sure that we're addressing the root causes of their sensory motor struggles. But a lot of kids really benefit from giving an overview of what the book is about, revisiting, then reflecting. Have them generate questions before the story, during, after. If your kids have issues seeing the big picture, then kind of provide the big picture of the story. If they have difficulty with details, help them know where they go. We want to prompt only as necessary, but really when you read with them, it's called dialogic reading. It comes from the word dialogue. Talk to them about the story the way they should be thinking about it. I wonder why he did that. I wonder what's going to happen next. What do you think? Yeah. And that way you're really kind of teaching them how to think about, you want to teach them how to think, not what to think.
Sure. Yeah.
Use graphic organizers, mnemonic devices to help, give them strategies. Oh, and if y'all are doing distance learning, you can go to teacherspayteachers.com and type in reading strategy bookmarks, and they will come up for all grade levels. I mean, all the way from pre-K through high school. And those can be just little reminders of strategies they need to use.
Okay, I am going to put that up. You said teachers pay teachers?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
There are free ones. There are ones for $1. They're very inexpensive and extremely helpful.
Okay, there it is. So great resources for that. Perfect. Okay, next slide.
Another thing to think about, we talked about how I know how to decode words, but a lot of kids do not have the self-awareness or the various critical thinking skills to understand or remember to employ. Wait, I didn't understand that. I need to go back and reread that. A lot of kids will just keep blowing by it, and it looks like they're in a rush to get finished, when in fact, they're not cognizant of the fact that they didn't understand what they just read. So that happens a lot. That requires a lot of self-regulation, knowing when their comprehension fails, and then the ability to implement it. Read aloud, stretch it out. Oh, this is an AG word. That says ag. This word is nag, and so on.
Yeah.
They may not know how to use context clues, especially if they have some sensory issues. I knew about context, but I couldn't pay attention to it because of my visual issues growing up. Ask yourself questions. That's different from what I thought he was going to do. Why did I think that? And why did he do something different?
Right.
put together what you've already read with the current text. This is huge, especially in chapter books and as books get longer. If everything I learn in one day is an island unto itself, I am not expanding knowledge. I'm not that house is going to be built much more slowly. But think about the author's purpose. When we're talking about characters and understanding their motivations and their feelings and their relationships, we also, even when we move into textbooks, why did this author go to such pains to give this many stats about this? What is he trying to emphasize? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
But pay attention to your thoughts. How is this making you feel? Should I be interpreting this with my heart, my head, a combination? Is the answer in black and white here, or am I supposed to read between the lines? These are the types of things we have to explicitly teach struggling kids to do.
Yeah, comprehension is a big one with us. So this is big. Good stuff. Let's see what else we got. Oh.
So this is huge. And we talked about background knowledge. Understand that I had different background knowledge growing up than a lot of people because I was blind. I was legally blind, so I didn't see what other people saw. And so then my auditory was oversensitive. I didn't have a sense of being upright and balanced, so I couldn't pay attention to the world in the same way others can. If you have kids with sensory motor challenges, their background knowledge is not building at the same rate, most likely. They may have misperceptions about something that happened. And we talked about the asking questions, identifying the author's purpose, identify the main idea. Please know whether your kids have difficulty with the main idea or the details, both, and address that.
Yeah.
Sequencing is a precursor to being able to predict what happened first, second, third, fourth. And if they stumble, what happened? And they're giving you, yeah, that's right. What else happened? What else happened? Then have them put it in order, tell them to visualize it, draw a picture, then tell you about the picture if they're struggling with that. I've talked about a lot of these cause and effect, inferences, predictions, being able to summarize it in their own words. That is really good language strategy, and that gets real comprehension going. Understanding the difference between fact and opinion, very important. Sometimes they're supposed to write answers that are their opinion about what happened. Sometimes it's the black and white facts. Let's see, making connections. That's all about working memory and pulling in background knowledge. I talked about visualize, reread for clarity. If they are blowing through, they may not know they didn't understand it. And then, are they reading too fast and their processing can't keep up with the speed of their decoding? That happens a lot with kids who are just whizzes at decoding in the early grades. But understand it doesn't stop there. On the right, you can see we have to know pragmatics. That's a lot of the social language understanding. We've talked about the meaning, sentence structure, but there's a white thing there. But understand the big difference is that when you're reading textbooks, it is very specific. It is much more advanced language. It is the book is laid out differently. If your kids struggle with visual spatial concepts, they may really not understand where the appendix is, where the glossary is, where the table of contents, where the summary bullet points at the end of a chapter are. So a lot of kids go through speech language evaluations at a school and they do not qualify. So then you think their language is fine. Plus they talked my ear off. That doesn't mean their language is okay. Okay.
Right.
So the expectations keep going up. And so even when those struggles started are big cues about what's causing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Awesome button. Okay, here we go. Okay. So this brings us to the close, my friends. This is the very end here. Now, we talked about the Woodlands coming soon. Heather, do you have an update on that? Like, what's the deal about the Woodlands?
I mean, it's opening in December. I do know that. I don't have a date yet, but it is opening next month, just a few weeks.
Amazing. Just in time for Christmas. What a nice present. And then, of course, Katie Mansfield, Southlake, folks, if you have any questions or if there's anything they can do to help you, please reach out because they're just a phone call away. And I know the staff is waiting. So you can book a 15-minute consultation or whatever you want just to get some help. So feel free to reach out. So, yeah, I'll take that screen away. And then this is our chance to say goodbye. Heather, are you doing anything fun for Thanksgiving?
I don't know what I'm doing yet.
Yeah, we don't either, quite honestly. We're trying to decide if we're going to have anybody over or if we're going to just, hunker down and just bunker up. I don't know. We'll have to see. But the next week will be fun. I'm excited about searching online for some new Black Friday deals and stuff like that. Shop from the comfort of my home and, figure it out. Buy a bunch of things I don't need. I don't think. I hope I don't do that. But yeah, no, we'll have fun. So, anyways, all right. Well, we will see you next week, everybody. And then, you have any shows coming up, Heather?
And on Thursdays with Dr. Brian Aspie at 3:30, and we should be on for this week. But if anybody has specific questions about your child, this is a topic I could do a training on all day or all weekend, and I'm trying to compress it into a half hour.
Yeah.
Please reach out. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I have a library of resources like crazy, and I'm really happy to help.
I love it. Thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you soon. We'll see you next week. Bye.
Thank you.